Welcome to the Our State Book Club podcast. I'm your host, New York Times bestselling author and North Carolina native Wiley Cash. In today's episode, we travel east to New Bern, North Carolina, the new home of author Ben Fountain, whose novel Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk was adapted for film by Ang Lee. His most recent novel, Devil Makes Three, is the January selection of the Our State Book Club. Today we'll discuss Ben's long road to publication and what it means for him to be back in North Carolina after forging a career and raising a family in Texas. Ben, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So I first met you, I guess, about almost 15 years ago, right before Billy Lynn came out, when our publisher sent us, along with Jess Walter, on a multi-city pre-publication tour. We're barnstorming the country, meeting with booksellers. And you and Jess were the seasoned pros. You'd already had a book out, and Jess had several. And y'all were both so kind to me, and you were so encouraging, and I was a rookie. I knew nothing. Can you talk about the experience of writing and publishing your first book, the story collection, Brief Encounters with Che Guevara?
Yeah. First of all, thanks for having me. And yes, you and I have been friends for a long time, and it is a great friendship in my life, and so I'm very grateful for that. Yeah, we barnstormed around the country. That would have been for Billy Lynn. The first book was story collection, Brief Encounters with Che Guevara, which came out in 2006. Mm-hmm. I quit practicing law to start writing in 1988. And it took me 17 years to get a book contract. And along the way, there was one failed novel, a second failed novel, half of a third failed novel. I will just, without belaboring it was a lot of failure.
Yeah.
And a lot of trying, failing, trying again. I think at a certain point, 10, 12 years in, any rational person would have said, this isn't working out. Maybe you should try something else.
Yeah, go back to the law.
Or something. And, but it was around that time, 10 years in, I had to make that decision. And I thought, well, I'm not hurting anybody. I'm doing what I want to do. I feel like I'm getting better. I'm taking care of my family. I was a house husband, so, running the house, raising the kids. And, can I live with the prospect of maybe never publishing a book? And I decided, yeah, I can live with that. And so I got very zen about it. And I focused on the work itself and taking pleasure in the work and seeing myself get better. And I felt like if it's my time someday, it'll be my time. And right about then, I got the agent I've had, for the last 25 years. Started getting stories in better magazines. And in 2003, we took the Brief Encounters manuscript out for sale, and it made it to the final cut at a bunch of places. Mm-hmm. But then the response we would get was, this is a first-time author, a short story collection, not another one. No, we aren't going to take it. And so I told my agent, Heather, I said, pull it in.
Yeah.
It's not my time. When it's my time, it'll be my time. We will probably sell it when we aren't trying to sell it.
Sure.
And 2 years later, that's exactly what happened.
Wow. How did that happen? I mean, did somebody come across it? Or?
Yeah, I had a story in Paris Review, and Will Blythe in Chapel Hill saw it, got in touch with me. He said, I have a friend who's an editor at HarperCollins. Let's send your manuscript to him. And so we did. And through various channels, I got connected with the editor, Lee Boudreau. Mm-hmm. And so it start to finish, it sold in about a week.
Wow.
But,
wow.
It was just my time.
What was, I know Lee, not exceptionally well, but I know Lee. What was it like working with an editor who was from the South? Was there a shorthand to that relationship that there might not have otherwise been?
Probably, yeah. I mean, we were definitely on the same vibe.
Sure.
And she got me, I got her. I got her Southern extroversion it felt very comfortable to me.
Sure.
And yeah, I mean, plus she's just a really smart woman.
Yeah.
And great editors. So, but yeah, there was a vibe from the very beginning.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. I know she thinks the world of you, obviously. So you went undergraduate to UNC Chapel Hill, and then you went to law school at Duke, and that's where you and Sherry met, right?
Right.
At Duke. When you left law school, as you said, you spent a lot of years writing every day when you left the law practice. How did that time of disappointment and rejection improve your craft? And more specifically, is there something that you can think of that you were really not good at, that over those years you got better at? And did your legal training give you that focus? Because being married to a now former attorney, my wife Mallory can focus on anything for long periods of time, and she can ingest and parse a lot of information because of her training. So how did your legal career and your craft kind of go hand in hand?
Yeah, not really. I think
Next question.
I think law school for 3 years, then practicing law for 5 years. The law is a very lockstep kind of thinking. I mean, it's rational thinking. It's A to B to C to D. And it took me a long time to figure out with fiction, you've got to pay attention to the emotional logic.
Yeah.
And so you may go from A to F, F to C, C to, Q. You have to follow the heart as opposed to the head. And so it took me a long time to loosen up. And that was part of it. So the law was a great education in the world, in the ways of the world. I'm glad I did it. But as far as helping me get the words on the page, no. I think it probably held me back. I mean, writing day after day after day, the first 2 or 3 years I hated everything I wrote. It was bad. I knew it was bad. And it's kind of mystifying. I mean, you can read something great. Like you could read Melville, Moby Dick. You can read Toni Morrison, Beloved. And you see the words on the page. It's like, that's how you do it.
Yeah.
This is how you do it. And then you go off and do your own writing, and it's crap.
Yeah.
And it's like, why can't I do that over here? And over the years, I guess I came to the realization that the only way you can hope to get some degree of competence, much less mastery, you just got to do it day by day, getting the words on the page, line by line, paragraph by paragraph. And there's just no substitute for it. You just got to grind it out. And I mean, there are some geniuses in the world, and it comes to them fast. And, hats off to them, good for them. But for most of us, we just have to spend a long time just figuring it out. And the only way you figure it out is by writing.
Sure, yeah. Is there a craft element that you felt, or you can look back and see your sense of character development or dialogue really evolving and improving? And is there something now that you really enjoy doing in terms of craft?
Yeah. I was skimming the surface for a lot of years. I would go heavy into research, and I got pretty good at doing the external, but it's like digging down into the psyche and into the heart, into the jungle that is human nature.
Sure. And
that's where I was missing the boat, like just digging deep. And I think that starts with digging deep into yourself. And I mean, part of what helped, and I'll just say this because full disclosure, it really helped my writing to see a shrink.
Yeah.
At about the age of 35, I realized there's some things I need to figure out if I'm going to, be a decent father and husband. And so for 5 years, twice a week, I went to see a shrink, and a very fine person, smart person. And it really helped my writing.
Yeah.
Like it peeled back layers and gave me some tools to look into myself. And I think that was a formative thing.
Sure.
In getting down into the, blood and guts.
I was telling a group of writers last week, I was visiting a college campus, and they were asking about writing and where do like ideas come from and how do you know when it's real? And to your point, I told them, we think of writing as an act of creation, but what it really is practically is an act of remembering and looking inward and saying, I'm trying to create this emotion of grief or regret on the page. Well, I need to get in touch with what grief and regret feels like and understand it. And then I can put it on the page and just remember when you felt those things, so kind of going in and kind of being honest with yourself. And I feel like nothing does that better than marriage and having children, really calling you on your, what, is kind of a way to unlock those emotions.
Yeah, I agree. It's, there's method acting. I think we have to be method writers.
Sure.
I mean, we have to, that's not all there is to it. And certainly it can't be, a narcissistic or self-indulgent exercise, but it's something we have to do if we're going to write anything worthwhile.
Yeah, absolutely. We will be right back with Ben Fountain after this quick break.
This episode of the Our State Book Club podcast is sponsored by Deerfield Episcopal Retirement Community in Asheville, North Carolina.
We're back with Ben Fountain. So Ben, you, if I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I'm wrong, you grew up in Elizabeth City and Cary.
I was born in Chapel Hill.
Yep.
My dad was getting his PhD. When I was about 3, we moved to Elizabeth City so he could be superintendent of public schools. When I was 7, we went from there to Kinston for him to be president of the community college there. And then when I was 13, we moved to Cary. He became president of the community college system. So, Cary being a suburb of Raleigh.
Sure.
So that's where I went to high school and where my parents were married.
So you really covered a lot of area in eastern North Carolina.
Yeah, and also my maternal grandparents were tobacco farmers, and they had a farm in Martin County between Plymouth and Jamesville. And then my paternal grandparents, they were my city grandparents. They lived in Rocky Mount.
Yeah.
And he was a lawyer, and she was a real estate maven.
Yeah.
And so Edgecombe County and Martin County, I have very deep roots in both of those places.
So given the area that you covered in eastern North Carolina and the places that you're from, Alan Gurganis is from Rocky Mount. We have a lot of literary power coming out of eastern North Carolina. What were some of your earliest literary experiences? Like, was there a teacher in elementary school, a library, or a book you came across that you thought, oh, wow, this is interesting?
Well, both my parents were readers. Books were just a part of our life. And my parents were what you would call good old-fashioned Southern liberals. They subscribed to the Book of the Month Club. They got Saturday Review. They, they were reading people. And so books were always around. I went to elementary school in Kinston at Northwest Elementary, and there was a great librarian there named Polly Ettinger. And she was just a wonderful person and a great librarian, and she knew kids, and she knew how to coach kids, towards things that would appeal to them. I remember she would open up the library on weekday mornings in the summer.
Oh, wow.
And you could go up there and just hang around the library, check out books.
Wow.
And it was just very relaxed, and those are very fond memories for me. Literary, like my friends and I took turns checking out certain books from the Northwest Elementary School library. Like, we were there at Pearl Harbor. I probably read that 20 times.
Yeah.
The Adventurous Life of Winston Churchill, probably read that 20 times. Just, anyway, so those are the things that come to mind.
Yeah. Do you think those two books in particular kind of portended your interest in history?
Well, it's just where I gravitated. And so fair enough,
Sure.
I suppose.
Sure. My elementary librarian was named Miss Fraunberger Neely at Robinson Elementary in Gastonia, and I can remember. And then before she came, there was a librarian named Miss Friday, and I can just remember their guidance about putting books in hands and how powerful that was, and just things they said to me about reading. And so, yeah, hearts out and hats off to librarians. So you and Sherry spent 41 years living in Dallas, Texas, and she was a long-time practicing attorney. Y'all moved to New Bern in 2024, late 2024, from Dallas. How did you settle on New Bern, and how are you finding that culture from living kind of in the heart of Dallas, right, to living in the coastal town of New Bern? How's that transition been?
Well, Dallas was great in all the ways that really matter. We made a life there. Sherry had a great career there. We had a great circle of friends who, we intend to keep in touch with. It never quite felt like home.
Yeah.
In a way, I felt like I was posted there.
Yeah.
Which is a bit cold, kind of a cold way to put it, and not exactly accurate, but I felt I needed to test myself against a big city, someplace not North Carolina. And, so I lived in Washington, I lived in New York, I ended up in Dallas. And, Dallas is very different from North Carolina. I remember when I first got to Dallas and going to a party, somebody asked me, who's the richest man in North Carolina? And I said, it never occurred to me to wonder.
Yeah.
Whereas in Texas, in Dallas, it's at the top of everyone's mind.
Sure.
It's like, and so similar in a lot of ways, but very different culture in many ways. I always miss North Carolina, especially the eastern part of the state. I miss cypress trees, swamps, rivers, the beach. And every summer we would come out to North Carolina and spend a couple of weeks at Atlantic Beach. Yeah. And when it came time to leave, my heart would break.
Yeah.
And I said to myself, someday I'm going to come and I'm not going to leave. I'm going to stay. Anyway, long story short, we decided now was the time in 2024. And we were ready for a change. We were ready to shake things up. And, all my family is still around here. And so we thought about the Triangle. Traffic there has just gotten so bananas that we shied away from that. We wanted it to be someplace where we could walk and where nature was close by. And we started looking at New Bern and realized this is the place.
Yeah. Speaking of having family in North Carolina, well, a couple of things. I've seen you over the years in many places. But whenever I see you in North Carolina, whether it's Asheville or Raleigh, I can feel I could feel your longing. And also you're kind of auditioning whatever town I was with you in. Like, you're like, I wonder if we could live in Asheville. This seems nice. I wonder if we could live in Raleigh. This seems nice. And speaking of your family in the area, I see your cousin at the food line near my house quite often. You got a cousin who lives
Oh, yeah?
here.
Okay.
So now we are moving into the North Carolina light. Well, actually, I want to go back to what you were saying about Dallas. We have a mutual friend, Wilmington native Will Evans, who is leading the charge in literary Dallas with Deep Vellum, with his press and the translations. I'm so proud of the work that he's doing, as I know you are. So your most recent novel, Devil Makes Three, this novel follows three primary characters as they navigate the post-coup landscape in Haiti in 1991. Can you talk about how you first came to travel to Haiti and what your experiences there have meant to you?
Yeah, I started going to Haiti in 1991, and I continued to go there 2 or 3 times a year for the next 25 years. When I started writing, I realized, well, I can follow my head and my heart wherever they're leading me. And one of the things they were leading me to was Haiti. I just started paying attention to it. This was in the late 80s. And got more and more curious about it, thinking, why is it the way it is? and just such a tough place, and the problems seem so intractable, and also, it just seemed like so sui generis. Every place is unique, but Haiti seems uniquer.
Sure.
Or the uniquest. And so I had a notion for a story, which morphed into a novel. And then I thought, well, I've got to go there. And I'd never been out of the country. I didn't know a soul in Haiti. I had a little bit of French left over from college. And so I thought, well, I got to go. And so I just showed up one day. And just from that first visit, I stayed a week, continued to go back and gradually built a circle of friends and acquaintances. And, over the next 25 years, just studying Haiti, going to Haiti, hanging out with Haitians in Haiti, also in Dallas. It's still very much part of my life, although it's, the security situation is such that I can't go there now. But it just seemed to me there were things happening in Haiti that I needed to try to understand, or at least engage with in a serious way, just by way of understanding myself, my own experience, my own country, why the world is the way it is, why it works the way it does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Haiti does feel, and I don't know anything close to the amount of history that you do or culture or politics about Haiti, but Haiti does feel like a place where all of the world's forces, both good and bad, have come to bear on the head of a pin in a very, very small place. What was it like in those early years, in the time of the coup, in the fallout of the coup, which is what you're writing about here, and we'll talk about in just a little bit. What was it like to be a white American on the ground amidst all of these competing and conflicting interests, international interest, local interest, national interest, intelligence interests? What was it like to be on the ground then?
Well, it was an education. My first trip was in May of 91. Jean-Bertrand Aristide had been inaugurated 2 months before. He was, a Catholic priest from a very tough parish in Port-au-Prince. He was elected in a popular landslide, promising an agenda of real reform that promised to do real things for the working people of Haiti. And he was taken out in a coup that September. So I was there in May, and I got to see the country at its most hopeful. And it just felt like things were on the way up. The entire country, you could tell people felt like finally we can start living in the world again. And building the country after the terrible years of the Duvalier regime and its aftermath. And I remember the clock alarm, the radio clock alarm going off that morning in September. And the first thing I heard was pop, 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 pop. And then the announcer said, "This is the sound of gunfire this morning in Port-au-Prince." And I thought, oh, hell, they've done it again. And he was taken out in a coup. So for the next 3 years, it was a very oppressive, brutal military regime running Haiti. And I kept going all those years. Throughout the coup years, I felt like I don't really know what I'm doing here, but I need to keep coming. I need to stay engaged. I need to try to figure out what's going on. And because it feels like something. And just trying to figure it out. This very complex place with this very deep, dense, long, and tough history. And trying to figure out how to make sense of what I was seeing in the moment at that particular time. So, it was an education. And it continues to be an education.
And that kind of leads me to my next question. You're there on the ground trying to figure out what you were doing there. And in Devil Makes Three, we have these three characters. One of them is a white American male who owns a scuba company, who's kind of trying to figure out what he's doing there. And then we have a daughter of native Haitians, someone of wealth and privilege trying to figure out what she's doing there and what she can do there. And then we've got a white female CIA agent who's trying to figure out what everybody's doing there, right? They're all kind of navigating this space. In Billy Lynn, the novel before Devil Makes Three, you kept a very tight focus on a young service member named Billy Lynn. And the novel has some flashbacks, but the thrust of the novel, the narrative thrust of the novel is Thanksgiving Day, Cowboy Stadium. These guys, these troops are being recognized at halftime after a firefight in Iraq. And we're tied in on Billy Lynn's psyche. And in some ways, we know more about Billy Lynn than Billy knows about himself, right? Because we're intuiting things that he is coming to understand about his place in the world and his place in the military. But with Devil Makes Three, we're literally locked in the moment as these people are discovering the limitations of their ability to affect change or to be affected by change. How did you make the decision to have that larger cast of characters over a longer span of time with Devil Makes Three instead of that tight focus on that tight day like you did Billy Lynn?
Well, that tight focus in Billy Lynn was out of necessity. I had two failed novels before that, and my downfall was making it too complex, too many moving parts. I didn't have the writing chops to handle this big sprawling material I was trying to write. And so with Billy Lynn, going into it, I thought, well, I can start in Iraq, I can start here. And then I thought, just do it in this one day. Keep it simple.
Yeah.
And
the unities, right? The oldest way of telling a story.
Yeah, which I mean, for me, they go in one ear and out the other. But just keep the focus tight. With Devil Makes Three, I mean, several things. Number one, I wanted to see if I could do a larger canvas. Just time, character, just complexity of the place, number one. And number two, Haiti is such a complex, dense, intense place. I thought, I can't do it justice. I can't hope to do it justice unless I go at it with these three main characters and let it, go for this amount of time, 18 months, 2 years, and really dig into it. And at a certain point, I realized this is going to be a long novel, and then I realized it's going to be a really long novel. And I struggled with that for a while, and then I thought, let it be what it needs to be.
Sure, and figure it out later.
Yeah. So I made my peace with it and said, write it the way it needs to be written.
Yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, Ben, I remember we were on tour. We crossed paths in Texas. And we shared a long car ride from Austin to Houston. And I was working on The Last Ballad, my Mill novel, which was about a political struggle. And I remember you telling me, let it be what it needs to be and figure it out. Get it on the page and get all of those characters down and parse through it, and you'll find it. Once it's there, you'll find it. Gosh, you took your own advice, and your book's great for it.
Thank you.
And you probably made my book better as a result. So aside from being a political novel, Devil Makes Three makes use of other genres. We have romance, failed romance maybe, aspects of a thriller, aspects of an adventure tale. How did you decide to blend those aspects in? Did you feel yourself consciously bringing them in? Or did you feel them kind of buoying the story, the narrative along in different spots?
Well, I wanted it to be, among other things, a ripping yarn.
Yeah.
I mean, I like to read ripping yarns.
Sure.
I like to read books where things happen, where the page numbers disappear, and I'm just in the book, and I'm just in the action of the book. The page itself disappears. And so that was part of my goal. I want things to happen in this book, which seems true to Haiti because it is a very dynamic place. Things are, I mean, a day in Haiti is like a month anywhere else. A lot of stuff comes at you. And I just felt like, there are all these currents going on, past and present, and all these agendas. being pursued by different people. And so it seemed to me, if I'm on my game, I can put all these ingredients in and, hopefully make a very compelling book to read. And to me, these are all natural aspects of human experience.
Sure.
I mean, people have told me, they say, man, there was a lot of sex in this book. And my reaction is, you think so? Really? Well, I mean, I think humans are pretty sexy. We like sex.
Yeah.
And especially the ages of, the main characters in this book in their 20s, you're thinking about sex a lot. And hopefully if you're living right, you're having a lot of sex. And so, well, maybe there is a lot of sex, but it just seemed to me, a natural part of the experience.
Sure. Yeah, there's also a lot of desire in the novel, especially between two particular characters that I won't give away. But there's a lot of desire, but there's also a lot of uncertainty between trying to pin down, and this might be a larger statement about Haiti, trying to pin down exactly who characters are and what their intentions are. Also, what are their even religious beliefs between Catholicism and voodoo and all these rumors about who believes what and who's relying on what. And I imagine that it feels, like you said, a day in Haiti is a year anywhere else. Mm-hmm. Very uncertain, very unstable, which I found really, really interesting.
That's a good way to put it. I mean, you do feel unstable there. Mm-hmm. Me as an outsider, certainly, I mean, dealing with the language and being decent at Creole, but never quite sure. And the same with French, but just also it's a very fluid place. Mm-hmm. And so, a certain amount of psychological stress goes on with, happens just being in Haiti.
Sure.
And Haitians feel it too. Yeah. I mean, it's a hard life there. Yeah. For Haitians.
I recently read Carolyn Forcher's memoir, What You Have Heard Is True. And I thought, gosh, this reminds me so much of The Devil Makes Three, because she's an American woman on the ground in El Salvador during this incredible upheaval. Yeah. And the way she feels is very much the characters felt in your novel. It felt a very strong through line between the two. I want to ask, given your experience in Haiti and your knowledge of Haiti, did you see any warning signs flashing for us here in the States or in the,
yeah,
North America as a whole?
Well, when you first start to go to Haiti, certain people will say, well, Haiti's so backwards. It's so far behind. And after a while, I started to think, no, actually, Haiti has always been ahead of the curve. Mm. And if you go through history, it's a litany of firsts, that happened in Haiti. Starting with Columbus and the first, settlement, in the Americas. He left 39 of his crew, on Hispaniola, right around near where the present-day Cape Haitian is, to literally hold the fort for him while he went back to Spain. And when he got back 9 months later, that settlement had been wiped out. So it was first contact, first settlement, first conflict, first bloodshed. And you just go from there. I mean, Haiti, it's a litany of firsts. Being in Haiti for those 25 years, seeing the environmental degradation, the use and abuse of human beings for economic benefit, to see how human beings are treated as economic units, to see this power politics, this authoritarian politics, playing out in these very brutal and these very brutal ways. It certainly made me think about my own country and what I thought I was beginning to see. And so let's go to, say, 2021. And so I'm writing Devil Makes Three there in Dallas, and I'm writing about Haiti in 1991, so 30 years previous. And so what's going on in Haiti in 1991? Well, you had a coup d'etat that took out a democratically, popularly elected government. You've got a public health crisis. You've got political violence in the streets. You've got authoritarian tendencies in your politics, and you've got extreme political polarization. And so then I'm sitting there in January of 2021 working on my Haiti book, and I'm looking at the news in the U.S., and we just had an attempted coup on January 6th to unseat a democratically elected government, a transfer of power. We have extreme political polarization. We've got political violence in the streets. We've got a public health crisis, and on and on and on. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking Haiti in 1991 looks sort of like the U.S. in 2021. Is Haiti 30 years ahead of us?
Yeah.
Well, we'll see. But it didn't feel irrelevant to me to be writing about Haiti.
Yeah, that's well said. So we are going to move on to the North Carolina lightning round to close out this episode. I'm going to ask you a series of questions about North Carolina. Quick answers, if you can. Who is a North Carolina writer who has particularly influenced you?
I would say Walker Percy. And even though he wasn't born in North Carolina, didn't grow up here, he did go to Chapel Hill for college.
That. Wow.
Yeah, man.
I didn't know that.
Yes, he went to UNC Chapel Hill, and so I think we can claim him.
Sure.
So I would say Walker Percy.
What about him? What about his work influenced you?
The twist he put on Southernness.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Faulkner loomed large for Percy's generation, the generation coming after, and I mean, he was like, what do you do after Faulkner? And Percy found a way to get out from under the shadow, and he did that by using humor and just updating the sensibility to what was going on
in the deep psychological penetration of his characters.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you went undergrad at Carolina and you went to law school at Duke. Who do you root for during basketball season? And you've got your Tar Heel top on there.
Well, I get to root for them both.
Yeah.
And so I have two horses in the race instead of one. When they play one another, it's Carolina.
Yeah.
It's Chapel Hill. It's just I'm imprinted that way.
Yeah, me too. I understand. Next question. What is your favorite barbecue spot in North Carolina? And if it's not in North Carolina, where is it?
I mean, Texas barbecue is okay. I mean, they think it's God's gift, to food.
All the brisket.
But I think North Carolina pork barbecue tends to be, more subtle, more flavorful, just more layers to it.
Sure.
And I mean, I'm just getting back to North Carolina, and frankly, I don't eat barbecue much anymore. But I remember there was a place outside of Raleigh. I think it was called David Smith's Barbecue. And that was pretty much the best food I've ever eaten. And I think it's been gone a long time.
Yeah.
But it was just a shack, out in the, far outer suburbs or inner rural area.
Sure.
Outside of Raleigh, and it was just a wonderful place.
Next question. Do you recall, you went undergrad at Carolina. Do you recall, and what was your major at Carolina?
English,
okay. Well, do you recall a particularly literary experience at Carolina that's really stayed with you? A professor, a book, a writer you met?
Well, without question, Doris Betts. And a great writer and a great teacher and just a great person.
Yeah.
And my sophomore year, fall semester, I took her Introduction to Creative Writing, the honors version. And I wasn't in the honors program. I talked my way into the class. And she realized pretty quickly, I think, that I was dead serious about all this and treated me accordingly. as a neophyte colleague,
Yeah.
and extremely nurturing, and also, also not babying me
Sure.
either. And the reading list for that class, the outside reading list alone was an education.
Yeah.
It's I remember because of that, I was introduced to Ezra Pound's ABC of Reading, which has been an extraordinary book in my life. And so a lot of great experiences at UNC, especially in the English department. But I would say Doris Betts stands out.
I was recently talking with Bland Simpson, and he was talking about when he joined the faculty at Carolina, what a wonderful colleague Doris Betts was, and how giving she was, and how supportive she was. And so that doesn't surprise me one bit. But, well, thank you, Ben, for joining me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
This episode of the Our State Book Club podcast is sponsored by Deerfield Episcopal Retirement Community in Asheville, North Carolina.
What might it be like underneath the sunrise in a state of flight? Coming back on me, it seems wonderful, the wandering mountain birds on a beach. Never moments ever wasted, turning away from your love. Honeybees, gardens of sweeter fruit, never tasted, no turning to other things. Will you be, will you seem, sweeter fruit, never tasted, don't turn your back on me. Mountains pushing into the sea.